And Canada called me a couple of weeks ago. They want to be part of it. To which I said, well, why don't you just join our country? You become 51, become the 51st state.
Donald Trump is inviting Canada into the United States. New York is refusing to allow Canada into the United States. Welcome back to the Canadian Shield. My name is Sterling. Got a lot to get into in this episode, including Donald Trump's latest troll of the far left in Canada. Before I get into that, though, I'm getting a lot of comments about how people are being unsubscribed from my channel. This, of course, has a lot to do with the censorship from Bill C-11 and Bill C-18. So if anybody out there who's listening wants to check and see if they're still subscribed and the notification bell is still hit. Also, everybody out there that is listening to this, they can share it with their socials so that I can have a larger reach to combat Bill C-11 and Bill C-18. All right, let's get into this. We're going to open with a story that shows yet again the Liberals are not serious about saving Canada. Google announces Tennessee as a site for small modular nuclear reactor. And I'll just give you the summary there at the top. Google partners with TVA, Carrios Power for nuclear project, the first U.S. utility power purchase agreement for the Generation 4 nuclear reactor. The project supports AI dominance and energy leadership, says the Energy Secretary, which of course is, part of the federal government. Google, with Carrios Power, has selected Tennessee as a site for advanced nuclear power plant that is expected to supply electricity to the big tech companies' data centers in the U.S. Southeast starting in 2030, the company said on Monday. So while Mark Carney draws up lists and tells you that if you kiss his ring and do everything that he wants, he might let you circumvent all of the bills that go against you. And maybe in 2035, you'll be allowed to start building something. Meanwhile, Google, with Trump only in office 6, 7, 8 months, has already found the ground and placed the location and got the approval to build its own small nuclear reactor for the AI, which is not that old, but they already got their plans to build their own nuclear reactor to power the AI. And meanwhile, Mark Carney, all he wants you to do is plead to get into his little group so that you can build one little tiny thing 4 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years. Who knows how long these liberals will stall and delay any project. But here we go. In the States, they're cranking it out left, right, and center. So how exactly are we going to be considered an energy superpower when Google has more than we do? Sticking with the Liberal government blocking Canada's prosperity and development, Chevron plots LNG growth in Europe with regasification terminal talks, executive says. U.S. oil major Chevron is in early stage talks to explore opportunities in Europe regasification terminals as part of its strategy to expand its global presence in the liquefied natural gas, LNG. The U.S. has become Europe's top LNG supplier since the continent sharply reduced its imports from Russia following Moscow's invasion of Ukraine in 2022. It's too bad that our government didn't have the foresight to understand that there was always going to be a need for an ever-growing demand for this product that we have the world's largest supply of. The Americans are right there, no problem at all. Just, we will take care of whatever it is you're looking for. This next one is interesting. Chevron, which is already contracted to export 7 million tons a year of LNG to the U.S. starting in 2026, has significantly ramped up its LNG trading operations. While not operating at the scale of Shell or Total Energies, the company is a major player among global energy firms. 7 million tons a year it's sending off to Europe, and it's not even in the big leagues. What are we doing, Canada? What do you mean? What are you talking about? That we should allow the Liberal government to interfere with that? What do you mean you don't think that the Albertans have a right to be upset? We have to stop Bill C-69, we have to stop Bill C-48, and we have to stop the emissions cap if we ever want to get any prosperity brought home to our nation, to our people. Now, if you need any more proof, as if you did, I know you probably don't, but I have a little bit more to show to you that the ideas and the concepts behind socialism do not work. At least not for the bulk of Canadians. Corporate subsidies, which we also like to call corporate welfare or handouts or bailouts, Ontario outspends Quebec. So if you can appreciate the two most populous provinces in the country are throwing tax dollars down the gullet of all of their corporations by the billions, rather than allow for free enterprise to reign. Now, I'll leave a link to the article, but I just want to pull out one paragraph because it pretty much sums it all up. But in 2017 to 2018, business support in Ontario shot up by nearly 90%. So right after the Liberals take over, while Quebec spent $4.8 billion that fiscal year, Ontario spent $6.4 billion. Every year since, Ontario has outspent Quebec by a fair margin. Since 2017, subsidies have grown by 182% in Ontario, compared to only 70% in Quebec. And if you just look quickly, you'll see that in the chart that's below it, it looks like from here, just quickly, that Ontario is essentially giving out $10 billion in tax payments. $10 billion they collect in taxes, and they're giving it directly to some of the wealthiest corporations in the province. And they are the wealthiest corporations, of course, because the government won't allow for free enterprise to knock them off their little pedestal, to upset their little apple cart. And that's exactly what the difference between the socialist system and the capitalist system, because it's trillions of dollars happening down in the United States of America, the largest economy on earth, has been for a long, long time, capitalist free market, ever shrinking and ever increasing taxes to pay for corporations so that they don't take their business elsewhere, because the socialist system in Canada doesn't allow for free market. Many people in this country came from other countries. And do you believe for one second that 90% of them didn't come here because they were escaping poverty? They were looking for something better? And how is it that we're coming to something better when all they're really doing is paying, again, out of their pocket for their hard work to give it to corporations so that those corporations can give super duper bonuses? I mean, it's all tax dollars. What do they care? We gotta realize, Canada, that what we're looking for in the world. Do we want poverty and years and years and years of indentured servitude? Or do we want some prosperity and the right to have a free market and come up with our own ideas and get the ball off the ground, and so on and so forth? Now, obviously, the Liberal government, between the gun buyback fiasco and this kind of economic disaster and the problems that I just talked about with business investment, they're desperately going to try to lean heavily on their bought and paid for media, because those corporations get bailouts, to try and change the narrative. And now what they've done is they got their public safety minister to come out and list, well, here it is. The federal government lists Bishnoi gang as a terrorist entity. Gang from Punjab and Haryana in northern India has spread into North America. Of course, this was what Pierre Poilievre has been saying. So you have to ask yourself, how many of Pierre Poilievre's ideas are the Liberal government shamelessly going to rip off? I mean, we're now into has to be a dozen of his ideas that they are just shamelessly taking. I mean, give him credit where credit is due. Nonetheless, this is a desperate ploy by the Liberal government to shore up its influence in many of the Indian, or Northern Indian at least, communities that live in Canada that are telling them they want their vote, and as well as trying to distract from the obvious things like we've been talking about: the gun buyback, the disaster of the economy, the refusal of the government to allow us to do any development, the tax bailouts of all the big corporations. They're hoping that they could say this just one day before the national holiday, and it will make everybody forget all about the problems. I don't know that that's going to work out the way that they figure, but it is an absolute testament to the desperation of the Liberal government, and how, rather than produce results, all they want to do is keep everybody chasing the next dramatic story. We're going to move over to a story that is actually going to impact the Liberal Party quite significantly. Another member of the NDP party has thrown their hat into the ring for the leadership of the NDP.
My name is Heather McPherson, and I am running to be the next leader of Canada's New Democratic Party. We don't grow by pushing people out. We grow by bringing people together. That's the path that Jack laid out. That is the path that Rachel paved. And like them, we need to make space for everyone. We need to fight for fairness and we need to stay true to our values, and we need to build a competitive and winning team to make sure that there are more New Democrats fighting for Canadians, a choice that unites, that delivers on the promise of good jobs, of wages that keep up, of homes people can afford, of public services that we can count on, and a government that has your back no matter who you.
Well, that's a very strange thing to hear from the NDP, I can assure you. Now, first, let's establish something. This probably will be the winner of the leadership for the NDP. However, she's very woke. She is nowhere near inclusive. I mean, she might, when she says inclusive, you have to remember the NDP won't allow X number of men to come into their conferences, to come into their rallies. Like if you want to become a member or run for as an NP to be a federal member of the NDP, you can't accept more than 50% of your vote from men. I mean, she's so exclusive, right? She talks about how we have to make it more open, but she does not mean Caucasian male. Those no. And I can't tell you the amount of time I've seen her stand up in the House of Commons and go after the Conservatives. You know, like, I mean, she'll open her statement by saying, I can't believe I'm being spoken to this way by this white man. And also how many times she's come down on against Israel. She's pretty far out there onto the woke side of the left. Like there's no doubt about it. However, as she will draw back many of the people who are disillusioned that were NDP supporters and then decided that they didn't like Jagmeet Singh, so they threw in with Mark Carney, their second choice. They'll now move back to the NDP. Of course, we have to wait for the spring for them to decide that they've already selected a leader. And then because they have no party status, they got to hope that they can find the funding. We might be able to get a next summer election out of this if the NDP can get their ducks in a row soon enough. Then they just simply go into the House of Commons, trigger no confidence or something to that effect, and we can get rid of the Liberal government once and for all, because many of the people that have supported the Liberal government used to be NDP and used to be Blanc. The Conservative vote only grew, and the Conservative vote will grow even more. So really the best thing we can do is just give a majority to the Conservatives, and then we can sit with the Conservatives for 10 years and fix this disaster. Nonetheless, the leadership of the NDP will probably be decided, and in all likelihood, she will garner most of the support, which will then be hilarious to watch her as could you imagine, like if Jagmeet Singh had been smart, he would have triggered an election and he would have become the official opposition. Can you imagine this woman debating Pierre Poilievre as the official opposition? That in itself will be entertainment. Sticking with woke, CBC is reporting Trump and Hegseth declare end to woke culture in U.S. military. I just think it's hilarious that in the title, CBC adds quote around the word woke. Like for some reason, they don't want to believe all of a sudden that it's a real word. Like their whole entire staff isn't woke. Like their entire culture, all their friends, their absolute... the whole echo chamber, the whole entire left is not woke. Like it doesn't exist. Like I don't understand why they decided to put it in quotes, except to try to send this message that it's not something real, that it's a slang, that it's a made up term. It's ridiculous. Of course, woke in itself is ridiculous, so I guess that makes sense. What's really going to trigger them is this. Hegseth announced new directives for troops that include gender neutral, quote unquote, or quote unquote male level standards for physical fitness. Male level or gender neutral means everybody has to do the same amount of push-ups, the same amount of chin-ups. I mean, it's going to be back to the standards that used to be. I'm not saying to you that they're going to start yelling at them again like they used to. That does work. It's a motivation that works in gyms all over the world until, of course, we got into this woke culture and all of a sudden everybody decided that their feelings matter more than results. Of course, Canada doesn't do any of that. We don't have our physical standards. You don't have to meet it until the day you graduate, not when you enter the military. It's kind of telling just the difference between the two ideologies, the two systems. One system, getting rich, everybody's getting healthy. And on the other system, not so much. Of course, when Trump was talking about it not being woke, he had to go ahead and mention the Golden Dome, which gave him the opportunity to take a jab at the Canadian leadership yet again, the Liberal Party, who we have to admit by now he doesn't have any respect for at all. I mean, he just had a conference on the security of Ukraine. He didn't even invite Carney again. And at the time, Carney was in New York. So obviously, whatever he was feeling about the Liberal Party, he still feels. And he had to take a jab, Of course, this will be between this and the recognizing the Bushney gang. This is all the Liberals are going to want to be talking about because they don't want anybody looking too closely at their failures.
And Canada called me a couple of weeks ago. They want to be part of it. To which I said, well, why don't you just join our country? You become 51, become the 51st state, and you get it for free. So I don't know if that made a big impact, but it does make a lot of sense. It actually makes, because they're having a hard time up there in Canada now, because as you know, with tariffs, everyone's coming into our country. We have more investment than we've ever had before, $17 trillion coming in. As an example, in 4 years, Biden didn't have $1 trillion. We have 17 trillion more than that in 8 months coming in. And they're coming in from Canada, Mexico, from Europe, from all over. AI, auto plants. Everybody's coming back to the United States.
And of course, everything that he's saying is true. $17 trillion. I mean, can you imagine the impact that would have on our economy if we were permitted to have the ability to put up a nuclear power plant right away and without ever having to go ahead and wait for the approval of one person sitting in Ottawa so many thousands of kilometers away? If we could just simply get down to business like they are down in the United States, they're $17 trillion. I mean, even if we were getting a $2 trillion investment, that would do so much to the current state of our GDP. Of course, we can't get any of that because nobody in their right mind is coming into Canada to invest. We all know that. They all know that. The Liberals know that. Everybody can see it from a mile away. The writing is on the wall. The Liberal government has throttled investment, has taxed private industry, and what private industry they are trying to rescue, they're doing it at the expense of you and I, so that they can put that industry right in their own pocket and make the dividends. I mean, the same business model held true in the USSR for 2 decades, and we all know how well they're. Oh wait, no, they have disappeared from the annals of history. We have a lot of money in this country we could be manufacturing, and what's worse though? What really bothers me is that we have a lot of Canadians in this country that have the entrepreneurial spirit that the Liberal Party is destroying. We have a lot of Canadians in this country that are inventive, and the Liberal Party is destroying, not only through their bad business policy, but through their censorship, because they start to limit what you're allowed to say. And the creative process, the inventive process is another byproduct of that. It's also removed because you can't tell them how you have a better idea for something that they thought of because they lose their mind. Channels like mine are constantly going to be targeted by people who think that they're saying something genius, and then all of a sudden someone like me points out the ridiculousness of it, and you all say, yeah, you know what, that's ridiculous. And then of course the next thing they do, instead of saying, wow, thanks for teaching me better way, they say, oh, how dare you. You guys have all seen it. Getting back to the 51st state comment, though, I'm pretty sure that Donald Trump was just trying to get a laugh out of the room. This wasn't a room of enlisted rank and file. This was a room of top brass people, right? These were bosses and commanders and whatnot. So they're serious people by their very nature. Now, Trump says 51st state, and the next thing you know, the entire Canadian media starts to lose its mind again. But from where I'm sitting, all I can hear Trump say is never say never. So at what point did we think that he had stopped thinking about it? At what point were we trying to convince ourselves that he wasn't, in fact, just waiting for the Liberal Party to drag us down yet further and further, and then come knocking, come begging for entrance or rescue from the largest economy and one of the strongest militaries on the face of the planet? At what point did we really believe that Donald Trump had let the thing go just because he was running around doing 15, 20, 30, 40 deals with other countries? You believe in the back of his mind that he'd forgotten about the longest border that he has, that he shares with the country to the north, that is allowing many of, now is the new outlook or the place to look for many of the criminals and many of the bad things that are crossing into the United States. Did anybody really believe that he was going to stop? What I hear is a man who's got a lot of things taken care of, and now he has the ability to poke fun at Canada yet again, as Canada's hardships are about to ramp up, with the weather about to change, with the poor economic, the shrinking of the economy, many of the industry that has left Canada, because now it's been many months and a lot of those buildings have been rebuilt into the United States. They're down there hiring. They've shut the offices and they've opened them up in Michigan. They've opened them up in Nevada. They've opened them up down there now, and they're hiring down there. 80,000 people are out of work. I don't know if Donald Trump was trying to troll Mark Carney or he was trying to give the boost to the Albertan separatist movement. I don't think it matters. I believe that it's time we as Canadians understand that it's the rubber's starting to meet the road, and we need to be thinking for ourselves. We have to be asking ourselves what's best for us and how can we get to that what's best for us. Now we're going to end on a laugh, because I like to save the best for last. As many of you might be aware, but if you aren't, here you go. The Toronto Blue Jays won the AL East. They became, the champions of the AL East, and they received a bye, which means they don't have to participate in the wild card the first round. And the wild card is being played between the Red Sox and the Yankees, which is already a pretty good rivalry. Now, the Yankees say that if they are able to beat the Red Sox, they're not going to sell any tickets to Canadians to watch the Blue Jays play in Yankee Stadium. And just let me say, on behalf of the Canadians, on behalf of the Blue Jays fans, and on behalf of all people in Canada that might have taken the time to come down into New York, and a sanctuary state that allows people in from all over the world without any documentation at all. But the Yankees don't want you as a Blue Jays fan in their stadium. And I would just say to the Yankees, chicken. That's all we hear, is that you're afraid of the noise Toronto might make when the fans cheer on our team. You're just upset that the Blue Jay fans are louder than the New York fans. I mean, everybody knows in the major leagues that the Rogers Center is very loud. They get loud in Toronto, and there's usually a sea or an ocean of blue shirts in the Blue Jays stadium. So it's pretty funny to think that would be something that the big, bad, mighty New York Yankees would be intimidated by. Now, it might be even funnier if the Red Sox beat the Yankees. Either way, I'm happy that the Blue Jays won, and I am looking forward to watching the playoffs. You can let me know what you think down in the comments. I'm going to wrap here. Thank you for listening. I'll talk to you next time.